Good morning, community. This is part 2 of the episode. We split into 2 parts. If you haven't listened to part 1 as yet, it should be the episode right before this one. You don't have to listen in order, but I would recommend that you do listen to it because it's a great episode and it gets into the topic of borrowed attention. This particular episode gets into content strategy. Whatever order you choose, thanks for listening, and don't forget, it's good to relate. All right, so what I want to talk about this week is why a content strategy should always start with who. As Ayinde mentioned, is a segue from some of what he talked about, and particularly the last thing that he said. Well, in order for us to understand that, I think what we should start off first with is what is a content strategy. And there are many different definitions floating about on the internet, and if you ask different people, some people can't even define what a strategy is in the first place. So it's very difficult for them to define what a content strategy is. My definition is a content strategy is a clear plan for creating, organizing, and distributing your content, and is designed to build and maintain the long-term customer relationships while achieving your business goals. So that is what it's designed to do. So if you have a plan that helps you create, organize, and distribute your content, then you have a content strategy based upon your business goals and having that for the long term. And when I say long term, content strategies could change. It doesn't have to stay the same. And you should really revise it at least once every year. Go back and revisit it, see if it works. And the way how the internet is moving these days, it might have to be faster than that. So that's what a content strategy is. But what's more important is what's in a content strategy. So you hear the definition, but then what's in a content strategy? And basically, there are a few components in there. There are 6 major ones. We're going to look at one of those things today, and we're going to split it into 2 parts. Right. But for Ayinde, from your experience, what are some of the things that might be in a content strategy, you think?
Well, thinking about it as a part of your marketing strategy, your content strategy, first of all, has to talk about who your target audience is, who you're trying to reach. I think that was one of the most critical things. So as marketers, we start in the market. So market orientation literally means, if you say you're doing marketing, it literally means starting with your potential market. Who is likely to buy this product? And so everything else in your marketing strategy, from your pricing to your distribution to your product development, your features, your feature set, etc., including your marketing communications, which your content strategy is part of, has to start in the market. So I think that's one of the major things will be included in that. Some other things you might talk about your platforms, your frequency, your calendars, your zero waste strategy, like how do I repurpose content? All of that can be part of your content strategy.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. So what you said there is actually the first thing and very important, but it's not the first thing. That's one of the 2 who's I want to talk about this morning. But I'm not going to talk about your ideal client profile, or what I like to call your exact customer. Who is your exact customer? So let's run down the list of the things that are in a content strategy. So in a content strategy, there is a who section. And I like to say it's the 2 who's of content. The first one is, who am I? So that might be you personally, if you are the one who is doing the content strategy, or it might be, who is the business, right? Who am I? And the second part of that is, who is my exact customer? Or some people would refer to it, my ideal client profile or my ideal client. So the 2 who's of content, of starting a content strategy, is who am I and who is my exact customer? Why are you smiling like that?
Why am I smiling? It's taking all in me not to sing a Beanie Man song every time you sing.
All right, yes. Yeah, I realize. I'm right now poking the bear, so let me don't do that anymore. Let me move on to the second thing, which is...
All my strength. So,
all his strength.
So, why? Go ahead.
Yes, the second part is, the second thing in a content strategy is the why. Why are you creating the content, right? What are the expected outcomes? What are your goals? What do you want to be known for? So the why. The third thing is, what is the content about? What's your point of view? What's your major theme or your master theme? What are the topics you're going to cover? So those are important because you have to talk about something. The next thing is the where is my exact customers? Where is my exact customer? Where are you going to distribute this content? So the distribution channels, whether that is direct messaging, social media, blog, email, all the different versions and the different ways you could get in contact with your particular customer or your exact customer. So where are your distribution channels? Where is your exact customer? Because wherever your customer is, that's where you want to be, right?
Mhm.
The next thing is, how will it be packaged? How will this content be packaged? So when you talk about that, you talk about the type of content, right? The type as in whether it's video, whether it's an image, whether it's text, whether it's in a format of an email, and you have formats. So you could have formats of video, for example, if your content type is video, you could have short form, you could have long form, mid form, you could have a podcast, you could have reels, you could have TikTok, some of which are similar, but they're different formats. How are you going to get into repurposing? How are you going to take a long form piece of content and turn it into something else? Are you going to cross post across platforms?
Right.
And then, of course, you have a section for experimentation. When something new comes out, are you going to try it? What time are you going to dedicate to doing that? If you want to create AI video as a part of your content strategy, are you going to experiment with that? If there's a new way of writing a hook, are you going to experiment with that? Did somebody suggest something to you? Is there a new platform that has emerged? Were you only on social media, classic social media, which is like Facebook and Instagram and YouTube, and then now you're saying, well, the LLMs are reading Reddit. Let me go and get on Reddit. Was your strategy for that? So how will it be packaged? Which is the type, format, repurposing, and experimentation is a major part of your content strategy. And the last thing, which is very important, is when. When will you distribute it? And Ayinde referenced that when he was talking about giving his feedback on what a content strategy might contain, is the frequency, how often you distribute, and the actual dates when you will actually post it, the days you will actually post it. And one big thing inside of the when, which is very important, but actually is not very important that people make a big deal, is the posting times. Posting times are not as important as they used to be.
Right.
Generally the rule of posting is that you post when the people who you want to talk to are up, but platforms are such that if people are interested in your content, they will find it. In fact, there are people who are in my feed very frequently and I'm not even subscribed to them. I don't even follow them and they're in my feed. So posting times are kind of not a major thing anymore, not in this current state of the algorithm.
I've read so many contrary things with regards to posting time that I realize while it might have some impact low down on the totem pole, there are too many more important things to do, like actually getting the content out.
Yeah.
And actually talking to your target audience and actually providing value, that in a lot of cases it's more important to do those things than to try to worry about posting time.
Yeah. The posting times are more for you, more of your internal structure and the discipline surrounding getting the content out than it is for giving you any advantage in getting to your exact customer.
To like give yourself a certain level of consistency.
Correct. Yeah. So that's true. So like today today one of the topics I was considering doing, which was connected to the iShowSpeed stuff, is I was going to look at streaming and how can you start streaming if you wanted to stream? Because of course, Speed was doing IRL streaming, which is in real life streaming. So he basically probably had a Starlink and was going around with it and streaming live from wherever he was. And in looking at streaming, I went back to the first days when I was streaming the Useful Content Creation show. And I realized that I had a set time I used to stream. I used to stream at 9:30 p.m. on a Thursday and 10:30 a.m. on a Saturday. I used to have 2 streams per week. And it was an exact time. So that was more for me to be disciplined and to meet the expectation of those who would come on live. And not so much because I feel like everybody was going to be available at that time. Because some people told me, frankly, I am not staying up at 9:30 to watch any show. Some people told me that. And then some people did. And then some people who were watching the show, like in a country like England or something, they were 4 hours ahead. So they would have to come on the stream like 1:30 in the morning, which they were not going to do. So they used to catch the replay the following day. And so the time is not so important as your internal structures and systems. And if you're individual, the discipline it takes to get that thing done and to be consistent. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let me run down those things again. Those are 6 things in a content strategy. It's the who, right? The 2 who's of content. The why are you creating the content? What is your content about? Where is your exact customer? That's distribution. How will your content be packaged, and when will you distribute the content, which is the calendaring and the dates, the actual dates behind it. Okay? So that's the foundation I'm going to lay before I get into the core of what we came to talk about, which is the who behind it. Any thoughts so far?
Yeah, I like the structure of it. I like that there's a certain level of flow, and it makes complete sense when you think about it like that. And it makes it easy for people to kind of follow the matrix or follow the structure. So it's easy to apply to any business. Any business person can ask themselves these 6 questions, answer these 6 questions, and have the beginning of a content strategy.
Yeah, and that's the idea. The idea is to make it very simple, very easy for anyone to take it and go through, figure those things out, and you'll have the beginnings of it. You have to put in all the details. This is a template. You have to fill in the blanks. It's a framework. You have to fill in the blanks, but it should give you a start. All right, so let's look at the first thing that we came to talk about in that list, which is the who, the who's of content. Now, the 2 who's of content, as I mentioned previously, are who am I and who is my exact customer, or as people would say traditionally, my ideal client profile. I like to say exact customer because it's shorter, and it makes you think in a more precise way, right? And of course, we've all heard this before. We've all heard the whole thing of know your ideal customer first. That's something that if you're in the marketing world, you would have heard that before, right? But the truth about that is that you never really get to discover your ideal customer until you clarify who you are first. Until you clarify who you are first. This is the foundation of your content. So you first need to know who am I, then you need to know who is my exact customer. Because if you don't know who you are, then you will not be able to tell what business out there fits you. So if you know who you are, then you'll know what kind of client will have a fit with you and how you will fit with your client. And that's why it's important to define those things. So let's get into how we do that, right? Let's get into how we define the who am I and what is inside of that particular part of your content strategy, or the first step in creating your content strategy. But let me just add too, one of the reasons why it's important to know who you are and then who is your exact customer, and you need to know both of these things together, is that when you know who you are and you know who your exact customer, then you're able to create something called an offer. Now, many of us may have heard the idea of what is an offer, and an offer is basically what you do for who, what problems does it solve, and what promise does it make. So what do you do for, and who do you do it for, what problem does it solve, and what promise does it make? That's what your offer is really inside of. And most people have never really thought about all of those things combined together as something that you can put on your website and say, this is how I help people. And so people will see that, will read it, will understand what you're doing. And the combination of all those things gives you the ability now to really talk to the market properly. If you don't have all those components, you could end up being generic. We're not going to get into creating offers because there's a ton of content out there about that, primarily from Alex Hormozi. He has written a whole book on $100 million offers, which you could go check out. I'm not going to talk about offers today, but offers are very important. But let's talk about the first who of creating a content strategy so that we'll all get that locked down, right? Well, there are 4 components of the who am I. The first one is, what is my expertise? Right. The second one is, what are my values? Mm-hmm. The third one is, what is my story? And then the fourth one is, what is my point of view? So the 4 components are your expertise, your values, your story, and your point of view. We're going to look at what those things involve and why you should have all those things if you want to start your content strategy right. Now, it starts off very simple and then it gets a lot more complex as we go down. So I want you to take note of what I'm going to say. I'm not going to try to figure out your problem for you, but I'm just going to state what it is. And you can take the template and go and figure it out for yourself if you want to do that. So let's look at the first one, which is, what is my expertise? So Ayinde, when you hear the question, what is my expertise? What comes to mind?
Internal strengths. What are the internal strengths of the organization? What you're good at. Mm-hmm. And I just want to echo the sentiment that the way I say it is everybody's not your customer. Because a lot of businesses, I think particularly in Trinidad and Tobago, there's this tendency when asking any business person, who is this for? What's the most likely answer? The most likely answer for everybody.
Yeah.
It can be for everybody. And I think that's the point you're making. You kind of have to drill down to that. It can't be for everybody. If you look at expertise alone, there are certain things that you're really good at that will benefit only a particular group of people.
Yep.
And it's not to say we're turning away clients and telling people, oh, you're not core, so you can't shop here. We're focusing, it's all about focusing energy and aligning certain things, and expertise is one of them. So you want to align expertise with a core problem that the target audience might have that you can solve in a way that's better than anybody else.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's how you end up with your offer. You're aligning a core expertise with a problem that you can solve for a very specific person. So that is so true. So your expertise is simply, what does your business do? Mm-hmm. What does your business do? One of the problems, as you mentioned or alluded to, if you drive around Trinidad and Tobago, sometimes you would see a sign that says specialized in, and then you see about 10 or 12 different things.
Yeah.
How could you be specialized in 12 different things? It's impossible, right? One or two maybe. But specialization, the meaning of specialization is that it's special. It's not common.
Right.
So
built into specialization is the whole idea of exclusion.
Exclusion.
The reason I can specialize in this because I've ignored all the other not so important things so that I can be really, really good at this thing. So,
Exactly. I like that. I like exclusion. It's the same thing with building community, standing for something, standing against something. If you specialize in, you're going to do this, you're not going to do these other things. So you're excluding stuff inside of what you're doing. And for some reason, companies are afraid to do that. Like businesses are afraid to do that because they feel like they have to do everything. I don't know if they're afraid that the market is too small, or they're afraid that they won't get any customers, or they're afraid to turn people away. I don't know. But the more you get known for something specific, it will grow a business faster. Trust me, it'll grow a business faster because people come to you only for that. What you have to ensure is that people want that thing, right? If people don't want it, then nobody will come. But if lots of people want it, then everybody will come, right? So expertise is, what does your business do? What is your product or service? Or what is the product or service that your business wants to sell? What problem does the product or service solve? So that is your expertise. So that is the first part of the who am I. The second part of the who am I. Now, that is the part that most people should be able to figure out very easily. What is your expertise? Right. These other ones are often never looked at. The other ones, 2, 3, and 4 are often never looked at, right? Or if they're looked at, they're not looked at in a way that is useful to creating content, right? So the second one is, what are my values? What are my values? Mm-hmm. When you hear that, Ayinde, what do you think of?
Your values are the things that are important to you, firstly as an individual inside of a company, because you can't get away from the fact that companies are real people, but also the values of the actual company, which may or may not align with individual values. Mm. And companies are usually built with a particular set of values underlying them. Sometimes these values are declared, sometimes they're not declared, sometimes these values are positive, sometimes they're not positive. But one thing you're 100% sure is that every organization have a set of values that drive it. And if you are the visionary lead, you're the CEO of a company, you are the the managing director of the company, and it is your job as CEO to build this organization, you have to be clear on a particular set of values or things that are important to you, that govern the way you operate and therefore governs the way that the organization operates.
Yeah, most definitely. So when you talk about values, you talk about the intangible things, right? What are the principles, your beliefs, your standards of behavior that you are unwilling to compromise on? You know, what are your principles, your beliefs, and standards of behavior that you are unwilling to compromise on? Because that will impact the way you create content. That will impact whether or not you choose to support certain types of content and content creators. It will impact the kind of brand deals you'll probably want to do. It will impact who you align with in the public eye. It will impact a whole ton of stuff. And so you want to be clear on your values, the principles, beliefs, and the standards of behavior that you are unwilling to compromise, right? So that is knowing your values is very important in the who. Yeah. Mm-hmm. The third thing that is important that people often don't look at is, and it's quite important because this will be one of the things that will help you stand out in growing AI infiltration in content, which is, what is my story? What is my story? So the nice thing about having a story is that the story is original to you. Your company's story is original to you. In recent time, I've been listening at the YouTube channel that talks about the rise and fall of companies and the stories behind how they got to be very powerful and then how that was taken away or how they lost that. Like today I was listening to what happened to Yahoo, and that Yahoo had opportunities on two occasions. One occasion, they had an opportunity to buy Google, which they didn't. And on another occasion, they had an opportunity to buy Facebook, which they passed on. And now both of those companies are worth together $3 trillion.
I'm not sure Yahoo buying them would have saved Yahoo. It might have worked the other way around. It might have killed Google and killed Facebook. Because you mentioned in two, but they had 9 lives. I'm surprised they're still around. Well, yeah, so, go ahead.
I think they did some interesting moves in between that, like buying parts of Alibaba, which then blew up. They did some interesting things, but they made more bad choices than good choices. And so they missed out on a lot. But they have a story. They have an arc of what happened with them. And part of how you can connect to people is knowing your history, knowing what has happened, knowing how you got here, and that can make you more relatable to customers. And you can integrate that into your content as part of how you connect with people. And so knowing your story is very important. How did I get here? And what are the details of my journey? How did I get where I am? And what are the details of my journey? So that is your story.
Let me push back on that one a little bit and be devil's advocate.
Sure.
Do you think customers really care about your story?
Not any way people try to tell it. So what people do is they take the entire story and put it as the frontline part of what they share. That's not what you should do. What you should do is that when you are creating your content, you use story as a leverage point to connect with people. So you talk about your expertise, the thing that you do, but then you use parts of your story, and not just the story as in how you get here, but how your story is about what happened with customers. Like, for example, you could talk about how you build the company, why as a company has a particular type of product, because you started off making this type of product, but now you do this. And so you do that as proof that this has improved. And so you take small snippets and components of your story. You don't just sit down and just tell the whole thing, even though that might be interesting to you. Nobody really cares. But knowing your story, you can leverage parts of those things to create content.
Right.
But you have to know it and know that it's an important part of how you also create. And it's tied in with your values and it's tied in with your expertise. So the way in which people normally do it is not the way you should do it, which is nobody wants to sit down and hear.
So is it like you're using your story then as a frame in which you can then fit value into that would then be useful for your target audience, as opposed to talking about yourself?
Yeah. The goal is not to talk about yourself. The goal is to show people that you have come this way already and you know what you're talking about. The goal is to give evidence of expertise. The goal is to be relatable. So it's not to stroke your own back. That's not the point. Otherwise, shut up, right? The
Yeah.
goal really is to show people, listen, and particularly, and let me give an example, particularly for people who are what we call solopreneurs or business owners. If you have had certain types of struggles and then you figure it out, that now becomes the way in which you can sell to other people by saying, I had this specific struggle. I was able to solve the problem. I know how it feels. I know how I got out. Let me help you get the same thing. So it makes you relatable in that sense. How you do it for a brand might be a bit different, but that's the idea of knowing your story. You know, how did you get where you are and what are the details of the journey? Not the kind of story that says my grandfather founded the company in 1945. Not that type of long-winded thing, but there's the specific things that connect to your expertise and the problem that you solve for people.
Right.
Yeah, that's what you want to do with your story. And there are different ways to craft that. And that's something that when you're doing your content strategy, you'll figure out and you'll integrate that into how you talk to people publicly. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And lastly, what you want to have locked down for your who in your content strategy is, what is my point of view? What is my point of view? And your point of view is your stance or the opinion that you have that is different to anyone else. And last week or a couple of weeks ago, I talked about meaningfully disagreeing. What's your stance on things that is different to everyone else? Where is the place that you are standing that you could see things in a different way to everyone else, right? And that is tied to your story and to your values. So I often describe your point of view as this. We hike, right? And when you hike, part of the point of a hike is that you go up. You
Right.
go up to a particular point. And often when you go up, you have a completely different view than you have when you were on the low ground. A point of view is taking someone on that low ground up the mountain with you and telling them, look out and see what you see. And that is a place that you are different. So they have a different view of how things might work. And that would be like, oh, now we understand why you do things this way, or why you have this particular product, or how you've been solving this problem. And so that's not something you would just talk about plainly, but that's something you have to keep in the back of your mind when you're crafting your content. So you know how your brand is communicating the things you're communicating. Like earlier in the podcast, we mentioned Nike and the fact that they are a kind of a adversarial, bold brand. And they had that ad that says, runners welcome, walkers tolerated, and they walked it back, which they should not have, because that was in alignment with their point of view, right? And so it's important that you know your point of view so you don't make brand mistakes like that in your content that you put out there. And so that is very important.
Yeah, I think so. I think having that clear sense of this is how we view the world and this is our overview of things, and allowing that to drive the content that you create, I think that's very important. It will allow you to stand out. One, it will allow you to differentiate yourself, which in the world of AI, differentiation is going to become very, very important, because a lot of AI is an amalgam of thoughts and views that exist. And so if everybody's putting out content in the same amalgam, or from the same amalgam, the same mix, the same stew, so to speak, it will not be terrible, but it wouldn't be great either. And so people will have to, brands will have to, companies will have to create content with a clear point of view that distinguishes them from the soup and distinguishes them from what everyone else is saying. And I'm not in any way advocating being controversial for the sake of being controversial, but you have to have done enough digging and lived enough inside of your particular industry that you have a point of view, and that point of view should be driving the voice of your content.
Yeah, AI is making people completely middle of the road, completely vanilla. And because it's average. It's an average of all the good and all the bad. So it's not only taking the good, it's also taking the bad. It's also taking the regurgitated. So you basically have a situation where you are becoming part of the mean, right? And it's plain to see if you look around and you look at the flyers that are on the, now you know the internet is flooded with flyers. Facebook is flooded with new flyers because it's cheap to do flyers because you're doing it for free. You're just typing in information and you tell it what to make. And basically the thumbnails are looking the same, the flyers are looking the same. You could tell, right? So no innovation, no sort of creativity is going into it anymore. And it really is a sad thing to see that no one wants to stand out. Now, no one really wants to stand out. So here's my, and this is just a massive segue from what I've been talking about, but it's kind of connected. Someone asked me this week what I think of AI, and I told them, listen, everything is going to come back to zero. And in the same way, word processors were revolutionary, and people used to put on their resume, I did a Microsoft Word course, and that was an asset. Mm-hmm. There's going to come a time when nobody would care if you did an AI course or not. It's just going to be the way things are. And we're going to come way back. We're going to come all the way back to things like positioning, about brand. You're going to come all the way back to your story, your expertise. Those things are going to become valuable. They're valuable now, just people choose to ignore them, but they're going to become more valuable in the future as AI becomes a normal part of life and nobody cares about the latest AI trick other than how it helps you do your work.
Right.
And so this wave is a wave that people are experiencing now, and they're saying, listen, I'm going to ride this wave and find out and the newfangled thing. But eventually all this will calm down. It will all calm down because all of the major companies are doing the same thing. Meta is doing it. Google is doing it. Anthropic is doing it. OpenAI is doing it. Manus, now Facebook has Manus. There are lots of different things happening. And when everybody has something, then nobody has anything. And it'll all become normal after a while. But it'll take a little while for that to happen. It'll have to have a lot of speed, and then it'll calm down. So nobody will be exclusive. In which case, saying that you did like 5 years from now, saying that you did a course on AI prompting, nobody will care.
Yeah. In fact, the opposite might start to gain traction. I was looking at an interesting video that was analyzing the way companies are now making ads about their ads. And the point was, only people who are really doing this are the people who are doing ads in a more traditional way, and they want you to know that it's not AI. Mm-hmm. So the clear example here is the recent Neo launch. So Apple did a very interesting ad for the launch of the new Neo MacBook. Mm-hmm. And a lot of those effects are actually practical effects.
Yeah,
and not AI. So it looked real cool. It looked like computer generated, and it looks very cool. But that in itself, like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, that would have been like, wow, you see that video Apple did? It was like fantastic video. Nobody would care how it was done. We would all assume it's some high level CGI taking place. But because of AI, you can't just put the impact of an ad like that is lost unless you talk about the fact that, hey, this thing was done and using practical effects. And they should create a whole other video now. So they're creating an ad about the ad that explains all the practical, real humans effects. I saw another one. Well, the creator talked about another one where they wanted to make it look like a bitmap video game, but it was all real live actors. So they had to do the makeup and so on. So the ad ran, and then they created this behind the scenes video so that people will know. Basically, marketers have to get to the point where you're not only declaring what your point of view is, but you're also declaring this point of view is not AI. And you have to find ways to communicate that. While companies will all be using AI, most companies, there are a few industries, but most companies will be using AI. If you're using AI just to create what everybody else is creating, you're going to fail. Yeah. And so then there's a kind, you're right, it comes back to zero. So it comes back to, well, how are you communicating any kind of value inside of your content? And any kind of differentiation inside of your content, not just, oh, AI did this in 10 minutes, because nobody cares if AI did it in 10 minutes. But people do care about what value they get.
Yeah. There used to be a time where the more money you had, the more exclusive you could be. But everything, because big companies want to make more money, they're making everything accessible to everyone. And because there's a fight in between all of those companies, what is happening is that they have to begin to the market the market has to be reached, so therefore they have to make it accessible, so therefore they have to lower some prices, and the technology is getting cheaper, and the more access people have to it, the more people can use it, and the more people use it, the more it'll be used in ways people didn't expect, and the more people use it in ways they didn't expect, the more it becomes a normal part of life, and it comes back to square one. But that's a whole other topic. We're kind of segueing in off the course a little bit. That's a whole other topic. Maybe we'll do an episode specifically talking about our thoughts on generative AI and LLMs and all those different things. And we'll do a specific episode on that. Anyway, that's the end of what I have to share in terms of the who of a content strategy. So what did we learn today, Ayinde?
Well, we learned about borrowed attention. That's one of the things that we were talking about. So we learned the definition of borrowed attention, which basically is as the text says, you're using the attention of some other personality, brand, event, anything that seems to have been going viral or is going viral in order to get in front of that same audience. And you create content around that. Important is not to do it the wrong way. So don't just repost. Don't try too hard to fit in. With trends, some things you might have to skip. It just doesn't apply to you. Try to avoid using negativity unless that's actually part of your brand and part of your target audience. What's the right ways to do it? Do official partnerships where possible. Add value when you create content around borrowed interests. Remember who your target audience is and remember who you are. So that's the two who's Juma was just talking about. Who am I? Who am I talking to? Most important, understand who your target audience is and who you are and create content around it. And don't just piggyback on what is happening or what is going viral.
Right. And what I learned today, I love your section about borrowed attention. I like to say borrowed authority as well. It's kind of in the same space. And somebody had to talk about I show speed, so we talked about speed a little bit. So I like that. And it's a good thing I didn't do it today. But from the content strategy perspective and why you should start with who in a content strategy. Of course, a content strategy is just a clear plan for creating, organizing, and distributing your content. And what's in a content strategy is the two who's of content, like who am I and who is your exact customer? Why are you creating content? What is your content about? Where is your exact customer? How can you find them? How will it be packaged and when will you distribute? And obviously inside of the two who's of content, there are some major things about the who am I, which is what is my expertise? What are my values? What is my story? And what is my point of view? And that is just one half of the two who's. So that is what we learned today. Today was a long day. This is the longest one. We're getting longer and longer. I'm beginning to think if we should just do one topic every episode. I'm not sure if we should, but it's getting longer and longer.
Yeah, something to consider. The thought did run across my mind. We're going to see how people are reacting to longer episodes. Maybe we just record 2 episodes at a time and split it. That might also...
Maybe we might call this 2 episodes. We might split this one into 2 and upload them separately because we missed last week.
That's a thing. We could do that.
So let's do that. All right. Thank you so much for joining us live on Instagram, on Facebook, and on LinkedIn. It's really, really great to hang out with you all again after we missed you all last week. We were thinking about you last week. And don't forget to go to itsgoodtorelate.com to get all the episodes, which will be updated very soon. We may split this episode into 2 to cover last week and this week.
All right. So thank you for joining us on It's Good to Relate podcast. Look forward to seeing you again. Have a good day.